God is good, and with each day that passes, brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. This is the Nathan NAPALM channel, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, especially if you're interested in Pantheon-related content on our march to launch, or just talking about old school MMOs, because that's what we do here. Today, guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about our latest stream, the one that had Mr. Happy and Alexensual in it, and I wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that happened, some of the questions that were asked, etc. So let's get right to it. Now, before I get into the questions that were asked, I do want to mention a couple of things. Number one, Mr. Happy, I've seen around the forum some people talking garbage about him a little bit and being a little toxic towards him. Please keep in mind, guys, that Mr. Happy, up until this point at least, wasn't covering Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, so he's not been following it. It's new to him. Everything's kind of brand new. So, you know, he kind of walked into this game, and I thought it was refreshing to see someone who really hasn't been following or aching after getting to play the game to see their impression of it and what they think. Now, Mr. Happy comes from Final Fantasy 11, Final Fantasy 14. That's what his channel is based on. So it was really cool to get him in on the stream. Now, Alexensual got just as much toxicity, if not worse, and we're not going to get into all that, but people in the community, at least an average amount of people, don't like Mr. Alexensual for various reasons. I kind of feel for him because many people in the community hate me as well, so I kind of feel for him, and I think he's a nice guy. I don't see what the big problem is, but anyway, guys, Alexensual did a really good stream. He has some really key questions. He really dug in pretty deep, and that's what made this video possible. So, big shout out to him. I'm going to have a link to his video. He also did a Pantheon discussion about the stream afterwards, and I'll have a link for that as well. But let's move into it.
Well, during the last stream, you guys mentioned talk about the raid sizes. Mm-hmm. So the plan was 12 and 14 currently, correct?
12 and 24, yeah.
Or 12 and 24, right. I was wondering if you can go more into detail about that. So specifically, would there be plans for a certain raid to be 12 and a different raid to be 24? Or is it more the same raid for different sizes, maybe like a mode?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of this stuff we can't speak on too in depth. But when I made that comment, it was not to say that we'll have a single raid that has 12 and 24 man versions. It was to say that we will have a raid that is a 24 person raid. We will have a different raid that is a 12-person raid, and that's kind of the pattern, at least for right now. That's the plan out of the gate, is to build our raid sizes around that core number of 24, because resource wise and just the kind of standard of quality and performance that we want to have in our raids, that's what we feel most comfortable with right now. Committing to. And then of course the 12-person raid would fall within those parameters. That's our plan out of the gate, but it's not that we're gonna, use the same raid and have these different sizes of the same raid. But it's also not to say that we're ruling out 40-person content or 36-person content, if you will. It's just that it's not our current focus for the raid areas that we're working on, and we want to get those finished and polished and tested thoroughly before we make a call on increasing that size for future raids.
Now, obviously, they were being very touchy with this particular subject. Why? Because, well, they're probably at a very early stage of some of these raids and how they're going to work. But what they did tell us was that they're focused on the 12-man and the 24-man raid. So think about it. In Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, there's 6 people per group. So 2 groups or 4 group raids is what they're focusing on. Now, once again, a lot of us coming from old school MMOs, we love the days where, especially since we know Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is going to be an open world game and not instance, we really enjoyed those days where we just grouped up with our entire guild, or several guilds, or we were, you know, there'd be a dude running through town screaming that there was a raid starting at 2 p.m. that day. You know what I mean? And just everybody, just ridiculous amounts of people would gather up and go out on this raid together. And a lot of us have really intricate, awesome memories from doing that, or even leading a raid like that, where there'd be 40 plus, 60 plus, 100 plus people on this raid, and it would just be epic, and organizing that was insane. And we've heard Brad McQuaid talk about that before in one of my other videos. I played that clip where he's talking about how crazy that was. I think that was in the interview with Boogie, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, it doesn't matter. What we got to know from this question was that they are focusing on the 2-group or 4-group raid size. However, they did not disqualify the fact that yes, there will be gargantuan, huge raids where you just need a massive amount of people, and that was really cool. It's very informative, and I'm very glad that Alexensual asked that question and was able to squeeze out just a little bit more information from the devs.
Like, what is the team's stance on like catch-up gear? And so, like, for example, let's say you have the content all planned out and it's all released, and there's a future patch or something that you know, introduces new content that has gear that replaces past gear. Like, what's the stance on the gear, the content that's already implemented in the game? Is that planning to like stay the same? Any changes, or?
You mean to update existing gear to make it on par with new gear that comes out?
Yeah, or like, I'm trying to think of the right wording here. Like, does the gear from previous tiers get like nerfed in a sense for people to catch up to experience the new content? Or is it relatively going to stay the same? Like the philosophy behind like the like tiers of content.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, that's a great question, and I think I can hear the heart behind the question too, and you know, some of the things that would be at stake in where that decision lands. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to answer it all fully right now as far as what we definitely are going to do, but to answer somewhat philosophically as well, one of the major things driving the itemization is the desire for to create and maintain identity within the game. This dagger that I'm holding right now, for example, it's got these like purple striations in it. It's the only dagger in the game that looks like that right now, and I like that. That's meaningful to me.
I've got 2 incoming. Let's take out the Primalist first. They're 2 Primalists, never mind. I've got the one on the left.
Okay.
I don't know if you can...
I'll try to mess the one behind. He's messed.
Okay, I'm gonna move up a little bit here. I'm gonna try to. There we go. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't mean to like put them on the spot. Just random. It's just good, just a good question.
It would,
like,
there's a way it would be.
That,
it would feel like a shame to me to put out an expansion and all of a sudden my Fang of the Shade Spider that I'm wielding now
he understands
gets altered in some way and loses that kind of timeless identity of what it is as an item. You know, in a sense, for better or for worse, because yeah, there's a point, there's a line that you cross where items kind of become forgotten because there's, you know, but I think, and so I think there's a challenge there, design-wise, challenge there when it comes to how itemization is done and how, you know, power tiering is done throughout expansions, where content gets higher level, players get higher level, and there's a natural kind of flow there. What I would be interested in, though, is... Yeah, I think we're okay, though. I think we can stay on this one and burn it down. I'd be interested in finding ways to keep itemization more relevant and not just kind of almost like omit it from the meaningful items in the game based on the expansion we're in by leveraging things like player attributes and the way that those can possibly grow to make older weapons more meaningful without changing their stats or inflating their stats or decreasing their stats artificially. I just don't ever like when things are artificially moved around. And I guess that's what I would say philosophy-wise as kind of what we're working towards, is not needing to artificially alter things just because of where we're at on a timeline.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you're just paying attention there, but I think that something just slipped there. This is the way I take it anyway. So, you know, this is kind of my opinion piece and how I saw the stream and different questions and answers. So keep that in mind. That's what this video is. So if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Sound off in the comments. Let me know what you think. You agree, disagree, or maybe you heard something totally different. But we know for a fact that the developers at Visionary Realms for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, they want to avoid some of these pitfalls that are eating away at the MMO genre right now. You know, problems like the discrepancies of gear. So a new big piece of content comes out, you know, a new raid, you know, whatever it may be, and with new gear in it. So the older gear at a certain, it's almost like they draw an imaginary line, and anything below that line is like obsolete now, okay? And it causes this gap in the players, and it's an issue, and it's a problem, and it's annoying. Okay, so what the whole thing about Pantheon Rise of Fallen is that they want their gear to be meaningful. So when you get something, it be cool, and it be awesome, and it be recognizable, and it be you, right? So how can they avoid that? Well, I heard him mention something. I'm going to replay that clip real quick of where I got this from. Let's replay that.
Keep itemization more relevant and not just kind of almost like omit it from the meaningful items in the game based on the expansion we're in by leveraging things like player attributes and the way that those can possibly grow to make older weapons more meaningful.
So what I can't help when I hear that, what I can't help to think about, is that what if they did it, think of some of the abilities. If you watch any of my ability videos or you follow Pantheon really closely, you'll know that there are abilities where it says something like, the higher your constitution rate is, the better percentage this ability might do for healing or for damage or whatever, right? So what if they set it up for gear to work kind of this way, right? So as the player gets stronger naturally by new expansions, new things coming out, they level up further, whatever the case may be, and their attributes, even if it doesn't have to be because they've raised the level cap, it could just be through AAs or any kind of advanced character expansion, okay, horizontally, vertically, it doesn't matter, but if it affects the stats of the core character, right, without gear, just the actual stats of the character, but naked character advancement, right? So if it affects that, so say, let's keep it on the same, so let's say the constitution stat were to go up for this character because of this new content, new AA, whatever it may be, then that means that the percentage of whatever defense or whatever it may be on this piece of gear goes up because it's based on the character's core constitution. Therefore, as the character gets better, their gear kind of percentage-wise grows with them. Okay, it's not totally ridiculous to assume that. Maybe this early it kind of is, but we have to jump to conclusions right now because the game's not out yet. But I think that's interesting, and I kind of felt like when he said that's kind of maybe what he meant. Now, whether it makes it in the game, we don't know. We'll see, but I liked it, and I thought that was very interesting. Now, they went on to talk more about the subject, so let's listen to that real quick.
I think what you're touching on there, Alex, too, with that question is an age-old problem, which has been around since the day of multi-user dungeons,
multi-user dimensions, yeah.
And that's called mudflation, at least partially. And what happens when developers try to sort of adjust according to that is they try to push everyone into the same sort of economy, and that's often why you'll see the kinds of things that you're talking about. Now, the good news is that we have one full-time designer working on economy, and we also have an economist.
Now they got completely interrupted, and it's actually one of my favorite parts from the entire stream because he pulled too many and they just started getting their butts kicked, and they kind of had to focus down, quit the blabbering on and talking, and they just had to focus on the game and get through it, and they did, and it was a really cool moment in the stream because he pulled too many, and it was rough, and it wasn't looking good, but they pulled through. So good job everybody on that stream, you did it really well. There was only 5 people instead of 6 in the group, you did great. But basically what that guy I think was trying to get into was all of this affects the economy, especially in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, where a ridiculous most amounts of drops or gear will be tradable. Okay, so everything affects the economy in this game. What he's trying to say is they have some specialists that are focusing just on that. Now, not only will that affect the actual money flow and trading and things like that, and how all that works, but also the drops and the gear that is actually, you know, producing a lot of this trade. So what he was trying to get at before he got interrupted by the ridiculous pool was that they had people working on that. So, and focusing on these things. So they're going to be very careful about how they approach this to try to, you know, bring down some of this gear creep or this mudflation, as he put it, okay? Because this all affects the economy of the world. Next up, we got a really good piece here from the developers about specialization. What I mean by that is how you can specialize. So the guy in the stream is asking about like a fire wizard. Could you specialize to just be a fire wizard? Or is it, you know, you have to learn the ice as well? Is that part of it? Or can you specialize in one of them? So, of course, in Pantheon Rise of Fallen, as most of you already know, that's not how it works, okay? Now, but there is specialization as far as giving you some customizable ways to customize your character with your class, sort of, you know, in a way. So they touched on that. Let's listen to that and see what he had to say.
Where specialization really starts to happen in a soft specialization kind of way is through statistics. And so noticing again, like on your abilities, when you see those modifying attributes underneath, there are several different attributes that govern how certain abilities are amplified, both in just their brute potency, but also in what they're capable of doing. So you have something like a wizard, your fire spells, I think, key off of intelligence, strength, and constitution. And the more intelligence, strength, and constitution you have through your gear, the more powerful your fire spells are going to be. But cold might rely on dexterity as a modifying attribute. And so, and same with magic, would have wisdom, I think, as its modifying attribute.
These are
but then you get into
graphics.
things like the enchanter, where
further,
you know, certain attributes might actually extend the length of your charm spells or your mez spells. So it's not only potency in the sense of damage numbers, but you get into, you know, as an enchanter, I've really focused on making sure that my crowd control abilities last as long as they possibly can, even at the, you know, to the detriment of maybe another aspect of my abilities, like I don't get as much mana back with my
here we go,
you know, Flay the Mind line or something like that. So I think we'll see some of that soft specialization happening based on the way players choose to gear themselves and the way that that's augmenting their abilities.
So I've heard people ask so many times, will I be able to specialize my character to do this or do that? You know, will I be able to you know, alter a tank and make them more like a, you know, a damage dealer or what have you? Well, here's the best answer we've gotten so far, which is yes, you do have some choice as far as what your character is by your stats. So how you allocate those and the gear that you wear to you know, bring up your stats and different things are all going to come into play into making your specific character feel special even amongst all the other characters playing that same class. So yes, there is some specialization, there is some customizable things you'll be able to do, all based right there in those stats. Now on top of that, you know, he didn't get into this because that wasn't really what the question was about, but don't forget that you also have those rare abilities that you can go out and get, that you can find and acquire. Now, some of these will almost be expected to have, I would assume, by the time you get to in-game. I don't want to talk too much about in-game, though, because this game's more about the journey anyway. It's more about the leveling up experience and getting to the end. The end is just kind of like your reward that you get to go do some cool stuff, right? So, you know, as far as that goes, I think it's very good. I think that was a great question. Now, guys, I don't want this video to go on too long. We're about to top right here at 20 minutes, so I'm going to cut it off. There's plenty more to talk about from the stream, so I'll be doing a separate video where we talk more about the other things that happen in the stream, but I think that was enough for now. It's quite a bit of information that we was able to glean from that, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that, you know, you can kind of see that even though Alexensual got all the hate, especially on the side of Reddit and things like that, that Alexensual did a really good stream. He has some really good questions, and that wasn't all of them, guys. Once again, I'll get back and I'll touch on more in another video later on, but I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and as always, God bless and happy gaming.